Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is the 3rd of December 2024. The last month is going ahead, in fact, very quickly, and the year is also slowly and steadily coming to an end. But we've got lots to discuss with you, so without further ado, this is the lineup for tonight. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the Middle East crisis of that is, of course, between Israel and Palestine, Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Yemen. And of course, this is date 422 of the conflict that began on the 7th of October last year, and today on the 3rd of October, 422 days since. So it still shows no signs of abating, despite the fact that Joe Biden has said that he's going to push forward for some kind of a ceasefire deal. But there is no ceasefire deal as we speak, at least between the Palestinians and the Israelis. There is one between the Israelis and the Lebanese, but the fact is that that is also a very shaky ceasefire deal as we speak, because of course the casualties are still happening, displacements are also still happening. There are some movements on the international arena, and we'll be discussing them in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the situation as far as Syria is concerned. Again, the Middle East, but of course is a separate issue because the issue is also different. Western powers, including the US, the European Union, have called for de-escalation in Syria. They said yesterday, following this Islamist-led offensive last week. Allies of President Bashar al-Assad, including Russia, Iran and Lebanon's Hezbollah, pledged to support the regime. Russian airstrikes lead Assad's counter-offensive. So, therein also in Syria, there is a whole political, religious and of course strategic game going on, and this is going to be our second segment. Then we are going to talk about the International Day of Persons with Disabilities that is being observed across the world, including in Pakistan. We've got the message from Antonio Guterres, we've got the message from our Prime Minister and our President that we'll be discussing. Of course, the theme is amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future. Finally, we're going to talk about skydivers, ladies and gentlemen. 96 skydivers who have joined hands mid-air to set a world record. And of course, these world records do come in, but they're very interesting to see how the people have the determination, the zeal and the passion to do things that maybe people like myself or my guests would not have the courage to do so. So 96 skydivers, ladies and gentlemen, have created a new world record. This is the lineup for today. Let's begin our segment. The first one that concerns the Middle East and the crisis that has now entered its 422nd day, ladies and gentlemen, and still no signs of abating despite the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. We've been joined by two guests. They are right here in the studios. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Dr. Munawar Hussain, Foreign Affairs expert, joins us on my right. And of course, our second guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. Saira Nawaz Abbasi, who is an international affairs expert as well, and also joins us for this segment. Thank you very much to both of my guests. Let's begin. I am having tongue twisters right now. Let's begin with Dr. Munawar. Dr. Munawar, I'd like to begin with Donald Trump and his huge, long statement that he has given as far as the Middle East crisis is concerned. And of course, he gives a reference to the hostages, and he says that if the hostages are not released by the 20th of January 2025, when he assumes power, all hell is going to break loose. But a lot of analysts are saying that hell is already broken loose as far as Palestine is concerned, wherein the conditions in which the people in Palestine who are still alive are living. When you look at warnings such as these, and of course the way the president-elect is also sided with Netanyahu, so has Joe Biden for that fact, how do you see the current situation and the near future when the president-elect actually takes in power? What do you foresee for the Palestinians?
Thank you very much for having me in the show. As far as the statement or the I think he has given a message on a social media platform.
Yes.
I would say it is a threat or a demand. And my question is US is in a position to threat any state or non-state actor at this stage when US, the political system and institution are weakening in the United States? We are observing election after elections. If you see the economy of the United States, it's weakening again. I mean, $38 trillion debt, 8 million people, they have gone below the poverty line, 18 million people, they can't afford the health care. Half of American population can't afford shelter. And if you see the political support in international forums, America has lost its say. For instance, what happened in United Nations General Assembly regarding Gaza, the resolution in the Security Council of the United Nations, the verdict of the ICJ. Look, I mean, power always has a psychological impact, and once you have lost psychological impact of the power, it means you are powerless. So what America has not done in support of Israel, they provided weapons, ammunitions, their third system, which is air defense system, their political diplomatic support, 17–18 billion dollars they have provided. What remains that when President Trump would come and would extend support to the Israelis and would threaten to the Gazans, what is in the hand of the people of Gaza now? It is completely destroyed. Their buildings, their infrastructure, it is completely destroyed. So I do not see the significance of this statement in that case. My third point is, I would say nevertheless President Trump, he wants to end war because he promised.
This is what he said. It was one of his first statements.
Exactly. Therefore, earlier he issued a statement for Netanyahu to end the war before he enters into the president's office, and now he is demanding the same from the Hamas. But now, as far as the hostage issue is concerned, the hostages, this issue is delayed not because of the Hamas, it is delayed because of the arrogance and ineptness of the Netanyahu. I mean, he is responsible for 33 the hostages which are killed. It is because of the attack from the Israeli side. It is not because of the Hamas attack. So therefore, they are responsible. My next point is that we must understand that now United States is in collision with the geographical powers and civilizations. And we must remember now the era of global dominance is over, and now different powers, they are dominating regions like China in Southeast Asia, in East Asia and Asia, America in Western Hemisphere, Russia and Eurasia. So era of global dominance is over. So now US.
But to the US, the era of global dominance is still far from over. This is what the US thinks. It's still the only global superpower, and a lot of its allies also, say the same, that the US is the only.
Omar Saab, perception and reality. I mean, there is
a perception. Perception
big difference.
Makes it very important.
But because of wrong perception, incorrect perception, always you have inept policies. But I would say that America is at the stage of make and break. If they would have arrogance, misuse of power and ineptness, then America, I believe that it would break the American influence in the Middle East. Already their influence in Asia is over, in Eurasia it is over, but they have an influence in the Middle East.
Dr. Saira, influence in the Middle East, the US influence in the Middle East. We remember when Donald Trump was president last time, he made Jerusalem the capital of Israel. And of course, he has shown a lot of sympathy towards the Israeli leadership and towards strengthening the US-Israel relations. What are you going to foresee, looking at the statement that he has just given, that he wants all the hostages to be released by the time he assumes power? But there are also a lot of subtexts in whatever he has said. What do you foresee for the people of Palestine? Because at this moment, as we speak, nothing tangible has happened as far as the ceasefire deal is concerned. What is going to happen from here, because we're already December, till the 20th of January and beyond? What do you foresee?
Well, considering the previous terms of President-elect Donald Trump, which will assume the new leadership role, second term in the United States, like you rightly mentioned, that he kind of supported every step of Netanyahu in his previous term. And this current statement that he has given basically signify that that it is going to adopt, the America is going to adopt a more aggressive policy towards the Middle East. More assertive language he had used in this statement. And I believe that such an aggressive policy towards Middle East and assertive stance would not bring any fruitful outcome of the situation. It would further worsen the situation, in the sense that, you know, although Biden administration had always been double playing, like at the one day they were giving the statement that they want to you know, help the Palestinian, and they want to end the suffering of Palestinian, but on the other hand, the next day they were giving the statements of giving them the aid and assistance. So they were playing diplomatically, the Biden administration, but this aggressive and assertive undiplomatic stance of Trump, I think that would be bringing down all the diplomatic efforts that had been there, and for all the Arab states who were involved in the diplomatic effort to, you know, bring the ceasefire. So that would bring a worsened situation in the Middle East, as in it will create trouble for the peaceful settlement of the dispute. It would also trouble the ceasefire negotiations. So I believe that the President Donald Trump should refrain itself from giving such hard and undiplomatic statements, because we have seen.
But he is known for his hard and undiplomatic
Yeah, but
statements,
we have
isn't
seen
he?
in the past what happened in, you know, during the Iraq war, when Bush administration, they were setting the deadlines, and then they were using the undiplomatic language, and they were using the hard stance over the Middle Eastern policy that ended up with them with nowhere, and the result of the Iraq war is in front of us. So US did have an influence because of all the international institutions, and major international players of course are their ally. I would not say that it lost complete influence. Diminishing is another debate, but I think they should be more careful, especially the new elect president. He should be more careful in giving such statements, because that would hurt not only the Arab sentiments, but all the people, Arab majority areas in the United States. That would also, and then world public opinion would also go against it. So I think he should be more careful about this.
All right. Dr. Munawar, Antonio Guterres says two things. He first of all says the number of humanitarian workers who've been killed since the 7th of October has reached 341. Then he talks about the number of amputees has also reached a level never seen before in the region. When you look at all of that, when you couple it with the humanitarian crisis that is there in the form of a lack of basic health facilities, lack of food, lack of water, what do you make of it? A, do you feel this is becoming the greatest tragedy of this century, if not also the previous century? Secondly, do you feel that the world kind of has become mute to the atrocities that are being committed and to the despair of the people of Palestine?
I mean, this is the slap on the face of humanity. When we say we are living in a human society, and we have an international society, a sense of international society, where we would address the common concerns, and you observe many meetings, whether it is on a climate change or economic cooperation or water management, so on and so forth. But when you see such developments, barbaric development in the Middle East in a 21st century, in front of the civilized world who call themselves civilized, the developed world. I mean, this is the slap on the face of humanity and civilization. It is complete failure of the United Nations. And we must remember that in history, League of Nations failed. Why League of Nations was failed? Because when Italy attacked Abyssinia and Japan captured Manchuria in 1938, this was the League of Nations that kept silence, could not do anything, and the major powers, they were giving appeasement to the Italy and the Japanese. So if you are at this moment giving appeasement to Netanyahu and even Narendra Modi in the case of Kashmir, it means that you are making the failure of the United Nations, and when this international body is failed, there would be complete anarchy, and when there would be anarchy, then Hobbes believes that everybody would be in a state of war against the all. This is, I mean, the height of something where Israel is denying the access, humanitarian access to the United Nations 91 times.
Yes.
And 9 times for other countries' request. Only Israel allowed one humanitarian aid access, and after some time they bombed the shelter where people they gathered for.
But this has been their maneuvering since the 7th of October. This is what
this is the permanent characteristic of Israel. We must understand this, that Israel is a rogue state because massive retaliation, self-righteousness, manipulation to the American presidents and world leadership, and pursuing the religious agenda of the greater Israel and derailing the peace deals and agreements. This is the permanent characteristic of Israel, and therefore I doubt about the recently ceasefire which is between Hezbollah and Israel, and this is the reason that they are attacking. You see Hezbollah's different positions.
But that is where I want to understand a bit better from your point of view as well, Dr. Saira. What do you see as far as this ceasefire deal between Hezbollah and Israel is concerned? It seems to be, in the beginning there was a lot of hope, a lot of optimism, but then slowly and steadily when we see Israel continuing to bombard parts of Lebanon again, it brings to mind a very shaky ceasefire deal. What is the future of this ceasefire deal? Is it going to run for some time, or is it going to end sooner than later? What are the consequences for both Lebanon and Gaza?
Like Dr. Munawar has just said, that the intentions of the disputants involved are very, very important, and like you have just raised in your question about that they are using the bombardment also along with the ceasefire. So I think the situation would remain uncertain, that what would be the outcome of this ceasefire. I am not very optimistic about that it will go long term, because one, the intentions, the role of international community is very, very important, and unfortunately the role of international community is also just stick towards just raising their voices in the form of statements only. Any tangible action or lack of tangible action by the international community and these states would of course that would bring fruitful situation. Otherwise, just giving a statement, Israel knows that they have the backing of the US and its allies, and nothing is happening to them, nothing is creating trouble for them.
Are they replicating the Gaza model in Lebanon?
Yes, because like in your programs many times I have been telling, this is my own analysis, that they from the beginning they wanted to expand the war. The greater Israel and the greater Middle East concept is in their mind. So they don't want to put an end or halt in the war. They want to further escalate, and we have seen that it is not just stick to the Lebanon, it is going of course everywhere, like the situation in Syria, because there are always spillover effects. So like I was mentioning, that the role of US is very crucial. In the past, whenever there is any such solvable situation came across in the Middle Eastern region regarding Palestine-Israel conflict, was only possible when the United States had played its role. So unless or because they have the diplomatic leverage, unless or until the US along with its allies and international community, if they do not put pressure on Israel, diplomatic pressure on Israel, I don't think any positive thing could happen, or ceasefire could be a long-term ceasefire. It would be short-term based on its own terms and conditions that Israel has given.
On particular paradigms, and then it will end, and then we will again be moving towards a new focus on how to bring an end or a pause to this current.
It's a cycle of violence and cat and mouse fight which is going on. We have
unfortunate
seen,
as it might be. Dr. Munawar, let's talk a little bit about the diplomatic efforts that are happening. The Saudi conference and the French president meet. and they say that there needs to be efforts as far as not only Gaza but also the consolidation of ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. Anthony Blinken meets Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, reiterates the importance of bringing the hostages home and ending the war in Gaza. He also says that Israel must do more to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance through Gaza. Joe Biden says his country over the coming days will make another push with Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel and others for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Is there some kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, or is it all just statements for the sake of statements?
Always we have to keep in our mind that always there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, this is good thing. But
One should be positive.
one has to be positive. But frankly speaking, I believe that why ceasefire is insisted by the United States, frankly speaking, it is the support to Israel, because Israel is exhausted. Militarily it is exhausted. The Israeli soldiers, they don't want to fight. They are writing letter again and again to the Netanyahu that stop the war. And politically, Israel is very weak because society is fragmented. Economically, I mean, its bond has a zero value in international market. Image-wise, Israel is very weakened. Once this war would be ended, I firmly believe Israel would emerge as a fragmented, divided, polarized society. So this is the kind of support. Now, why France is supporting for ceasefire, insisting for ceasefire? Because
both in Gaza and in Lebanon.
Exactly, but it is because of the history of France, because of number of revolutions. They think out of the box, and this was the reason they supported even Americans in their revolutionary war against the British colonial Raj. As far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, because Mohammed bin Salman is trying to diversify economy and to bring the nation on the path of development. I mean, this is a major hurdle. So therefore, they want peace in the Middle East. Why Joe Biden is interested for a peace deal? One reason is...
Remember the three-phase ceasefire deal?
Exactly. This is to restore their credibility. They have lost their credibility in American politics, especially the Democrats. How they can win the seats in upcoming elections, how they again would enter into the White House. This is the major...
they have just a few days left, don't they? They have a few days left.
I am not talking about this. I mean, I am talking about the next election, maybe in 2028, I think, 2028, 29. So they are trying to restore.
We have to go to a short break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and we're discussing the Middle East crisis, and we're discussing with Dr. Munawar as to the role of the United States. And Dr. Munawar, you were saying?
I was saying that America is thinking about the regaining their power and influence in the world. And for that, since America is known for its idealism, you know, if you see the three historical goals of American foreign policy, one is security, other is economic prosperity, and third one is the promotion of American ideals. When America came into being, their major slogan was to build to build a city upon a hill. I mean, a perfect society for others to follow. And unfortunately, since the Second World War period, America adopted this interventionist policy, used hard power. Otherwise, I believe that American soft power is more influential than American hard power. So my fear is that because of this threatening threats and excessive use of hard power, especially in the case of Middle East and in Eurasia in the case of Ukraine, America would lose its credibility and influence in the world. And therefore, I believe that President Joe Biden is putting last-ditch efforts. Exactly. In order to restore its credibility and credibility.
So it's also a political move. It's also a strategic move, but at the same time, it's a political move. Dr. Saira, Israeli government seems to be really inclined towards annexing more of the occupied West Bank. This is what they have, hinted many a times. Also, they want to annex part of Palestine, of Gaza. This is what they say, that they want 50% of the Palestinians to emigrate to other countries, and so that they can occupy parts of Palestine. Is this end game or seemingly end game of Israel vis-a-vis the occupied West Bank and Gaza going to work in the long run?
Well, I don't believe it is going to be an end game. We still have to see, like you just discussed the statement of the President Donald Trump. So we yet have to see that what would be American, because that his stance is very, very important, how he would take through Israel and Palestine in the coming days. That is very important, and that will decide the future course of actions of Israel towards Palestine and Gaza. But so I don't, considering his previous courses of action and this current statement, I don't see any such end game that is going to
But
happen.
do you feel that the Israeli government is going to annex parts of the occupied West Bank and Gaza?
Of course, that is the part of their grand strategy, that they will employ that, and they would try to cover as much area as they could, and they have taken in the past also. In I think 2005, they an agreement, international agreement was signed in which they give it back to the Palestinians. So I think this is the part of their grand strategy, but that would again bringing very dire situation and resistance from the Palestinian factions and excess of resistance. So that would bring more severe consequences of the situation. So any such statement, any such action should be refrained if they want the regional stability. Because that would be disastrous consequences and outcomes and implications for the regional as well as, of course, for the rest of the world.
Dr. Munawar, the ICC, the ICJ, do they still have any credence, or the United Nations for that matter? Look at the arrest warrants that have been issued by the ICC, that a lot of countries do not want to abide to, although EU policy chief Joseph Borrell says that the EU needs to comply with it, but there are countries that do not want to comply with it. Where does that leave the legality as far as decisions taken by the ICC, the ICJ are concerned?
ICJ verdicts are always implemented by the UN Security Council through force. And now Security Council forces are provided by the global north, resources are provided by the global north, and they are not willing to use such force against Israel. This is simple. I mean, this is the explanation. If the global south really wants to resolve their issues and implement the resolutions of United Nations Security Council and ICJ, they have to provide the resources in the form of the peacekeeping forces and monetary help to the UN Security Council.
All right.
My second point is that ICJ does not have its own machinery to implement the verdict in different parts of the world. It is this is the morality, and this is one of the very important assumption of liberal school of thought, that this is the morality which is check on the naked use of power. But unfortunately, the morality, international morality, is weakened now, and there is a rule like in the Middle East, might is right. So therefore, I firmly believe that if the important nation of the Middle East wants to implement such verdict and resolution of the UN Security Council and want to maintain peace, they have to dedicate the resources.
And I think there is an issue of jurisdiction also. There are some countries who did not sign ICC, for example, Israel. So that doesn't come.
US,
yes, not the US. So that doesn't come under the jurisdiction. And another issue of sovereignty. So I believe that unless or until Netanyahu will go towards those countries where they allow the arrest of the Netanyahu, that would not be implementable. At least I am not optimistic about it.
But I think everybody is very cautiously optimistic, or not optimistic for that matter. Thank you very much, Dr. Munawar Hussain, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Middle East. We continue with our second segment, which also concerns the Middle East, with Dr. Saira Nawaz Abbasi, and that concerns Syria. Dr. Sahiba, advances by opposition fighters have raised questions about how Russia, Iran, Turkey and the US are going to respond. In Syria's war, Russia, Iran, Turkey, US and other countries are backing different factions as we speak. After this years-long deadlock, a swift operation offensive has ushered in a new phase of this conflict. How are these powers going to react? This is the question that is on many a mind.
Well, we have to see that the Syrian conflict had been another very problematic issue in the Middle East, and a very destabilizing issue in the Middle East. That we have seen it was started since 2011, and Russia had been the major player into the Syrian conflict, because they intervened militarily by the invitation of the then regime, which is currently also in place, President Bashar al-Assad. This was a civil war which was transformed into an international conflict. So interestingly, in this international conflict, all the states that you have just named, be it Russia, Turkey, Iran, United States of America, and the other regional actors and factions, they have their own interest. Each and every state has its own interest. Coming back to your question, that how would they respond to it? Of course, Russia would like the pro-Russian regime of Bashar al-Assad to sustain, and any such an effort which would try to undermine its pro-Russian ally, of course they would more intensify their operations inside Syria, because not just they are inside Syria, but they also having the military bases, the air base and the naval base, which provide access to the Mediterranean region, to the Russia. So of course they would try to intensify their military operations. Then we have seen the Turkey, of course they are more pro towards the Kurdish forces inside the Syria, which are creating another kind of trouble for the regime. And the third part is Iran. Iran is more pro towards the Bashar al-Assad regime, because they also provided aid and assistance to political and diplomatic, and as well as the military assistance to the Bashar al-Assad before Russia came in. When these interests collide, unfortunately, that make the situation more worse inside the Syria, and we have seen over the period of the decade that has been happening.
All right, now let's talk a little bit about the international developments vis-a-vis Syria. This time the US calls for de-escalation in Syria. The EU calls on all sides to de-escalate as well. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says he is alarmed by the violence, calls for immediate halt to the fighting. The UN Security Council is going to hold an emergency meeting today on Syria following this offensive by the rebels who captured a lot of important areas, Aleppo, Hama, as far as Syria is concerned. Will all of these efforts, all these statements, or this meeting of the UNSC lead to some kind of a breakthrough?
Again, you would say me that why I am unoptimistic. Like I said, there is a history since 2011. Unfortunately, we are seeing a pattern in the world politics, particularly in the Middle East and the war of Russia and Ukraine, where international institutions seems to be very ineffective to halt the violence and to put restraint between the disputants and actors, because of course the role of great powers in such conflicts. And I would try to look at these conflicts through the lens of the great power politics, because when the Syrian conflict was started, it was a civil war. But then the US intervened into the conflict because the stated slogan or the stated narrative was that we want to to eliminate the ISIS and the non-state actors who are creating troubles inside the Syria. On the other hand, Russia had to rush towards the Syrian, because Syria had been an ally of the Russian Federation since the time of the Soviet Union. So they wanted them, and the Turkey, of course, it's the Syrian part which is along the border of the Turkey. They wanted to help the Kurd and the Kurdish movement and all that. And the other regional powers, they have their own interests. So such things were happening, and the major role was played by the US on the one hand and the Russia on the other hand. hand. So the country's civil war was divided between the two great powers, again Russia and the US. And unfortunately, the escalation of violence had been taken place, either it was by the regime of Bashar al-Assad, by the Russian Federation, or
but
the
we had
United
never
States
seen
of
an
America.
escalation of this kind by rebels in many a years, and all of a sudden we see this escalation. What led to this escalation?
Again, because of the when there is a prolonged when the conflict is prolonged, of course that would bring more factions to rise, and when there is indiscriminate killings of civilians, then more extremist behavior and more extremism has risen. So that's the foremost reason that bring a more escalation, because of course the locals, the people who are suffering in the conflict, they had to do by themselves to bring down the cycle of escalation and the violence. So this is the particular reason, along with the ineffectiveness of international body. So I don't see any breakthrough that could happen. However, yes, a diplomatic effort is always good. At least a symbolic, condemnation by the international community, by the international bodies should be there, because having a body of law is better than having nothing.
I agree with you.
Yes, so yes, and that could bring a result of breakthrough if there is a commitment, a political will to end the situation, to bring ease in the situation, and to end the cycle of violence.
Well, just speaking of commitment, I mean, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also met with the Iranian Foreign Minister very recently, and has talked and called for an end to this instability, quote unquote, in Syria, and an agreement to stop the civil war. When you talk of a civil war, any war, the basic major casualty are the people, are the civilians of the area. When we look at Aleppo, the situation in Aleppo as we speak, when we look at the situation in Hama as we speak, it is the people who are bearing the brunt of it all. What needs to be done to alleviate the humanitarian crisis that is developing in Syria?
It is very similar to the situation in Palestine, or any sort of violence which is in place, in which diplomacy of the other state, the mediators, they have their role to play. Again, United States of America, Russia, and all the actors who are involved, the regional actors particularly, like you were mentioning, the concerns of Saudi Arabia, the concerns of all the neighboring states. I mean, because there has always been spillover effect. So unless or until
this is a very important point that you highlight, spillover effect, and we have with us online General Retired RG Mohammad Abbas, who is a Syrian political and military analyst, right here with us now. Sir, great power politics, strategic designs of different players in Syria. What is happening as we speak? I'd like to understand what are the latest developments in Syria and what is being done in order to diffuse this current situation.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation. Actually, I have short of time to stay with you, unfortunately, to tell you that, because I have other things. But I'd like to answer this question, and I want to assign about what is going in Syria. I'd like to tell you that there's no civil war. There is no civil war. There are in Syria is just an interference of the American interference to dominate, to control the geopolitical, the geostrategical position of Syria. So the war happened or started on 2011 by using the what called the proxy armies, the proxy warriors who came to Syria by the name of freedom and democratic and others, and the Khilafah state, they are another type, another face of Al-Qaeda organization or ISIS organization, Jabhat al-Nusra organization, and they call them in many Islamic names, unfortunately to tell you that. Now after the defeating Israeli defeating in Gaza Strip and in southern of Lebanon, Netanyahu said we are going to punish Syria because Syria is going to support the resistant axis, and Syria is a, let's say, Syria is the main position for the resistance and access. We are very close to Palestine, and we are supporting. Really, we are saying in a loud voice that we are supporting resistance, and we are a member of the resistance. Now, I'd like to tell you that Netanyahu said before one day that President al-Assad is playing in fire. What does that it means? It means on the other day that the Israeli troops, Israeli proxy troops, Israeli proxy armies who named Jabhat al-Nusra, ISIS, and Qassad, what they call the Qassad, or so, you know, that they are the what they call the democratic forces, Syrian forces. Now, those groups attacked Syria in the southeastern of Idlib and southwestern of Aleppo. They penetrated, they breached out the trenches, the defending lines, and very high speed. They arrived to Aleppo by using the main street or the main road of Aleppo, Damascus, and by using the misinformation media, by using the another types of what we say the sleeping cells in Aleppo. They easily, unfortunately to say that, easily they dominated the Aleppo position, Aleppo city. Unfortunately to say that, very soon that happened. After that, they developed their attack and tried to penetrate the another lines for the southern to the northern of Hama. The Syrian Arab Army re-spread in another position for defending position very close to Hama town, and started defending on a let's say on a steel line or very strong lines, offered the opportunity to face that wide attack of these terrorist groups. Nowadays, you could say that the attack had been stopped, and the Syrian Arab Army started affecting by artillery, by missiles, by also the jet, or the Russian and Syrian jet bombard the lines supplied the warehouse positions, the headquarters of those tourists.
All right. Thank you very much, General Retired RG Mohammad Abbas, a senior political and military analyst, to have given us the time. I know you're very short of time, to have given us the time, and of course we will take your point of view in the coming days as well, as far as the situation in Syria is concerned. That continues to be of grave concern, not only for Syria and the Syrian government, but also for the Middle East. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much, Dr. Saira Nawaz Abbas, international affairs expert, to have stayed with us throughout the show to discuss Middle East as a whole, whether it be Palestine or whether it be Syria. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Let's finish with our last two stories very quickly. The first is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities that is being observed across the world today, including in Pakistan. This year's theme is amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future. And of course, this highlights a vital truth that the journey towards a more inclusive world must be led by those who understand its challenges firsthand. There was a very important message by our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who talked about that. Our President Asif Ali Zardari said that significant strides had been taken in empowering and uplifting people with disabilities through various legal and institutional frameworks. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about our last story of the day, and that concerns skydiving. Now, 96 skydivers have joined hands mid-air to set a new world record. This group of 96 people, representing 20 different countries, 20 different nationalities, joined hands and maintained a heads-up position in formation to set a new world record. This heads-up position, if you can see the visual on the alternate screen, is when the skydiver looks straight ahead rather than looking down at the ground, a position known as head down. A new world record has now since been established by these 96 skydivers, and congratulations to these 96 skydivers that belong to 20 different countries. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we end today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.